Hello and welcome back to the Librarian of the Rings. Today we're going to talk about what's going to be most important in the Hobbit Magic the Gathering set pre-release. For some of you, this might be your very first pre-release because it's the Hobbit, or maybe you got into Magic in the Lord of the Rings, but you missed the pre-release for that and you haven't gone to a pre-release since because you're only really in it for the Tolkien cards. If that's the case, then pre-releases will be new to you and you need to understand what's important and what you are looking for because you only have about 50 minutes to build that deck at the pre-release. You want to make sure you're getting the right stuff in there. So let's talk about what's most important and what's most important in this set. The most important thing in a pre-release deck is removal. You want to be able to shut down your opponent's engine. You want to be able to stop the things that they want to happen from happening, and that's by removing cards. So there are about 37 removal cards, or cards that tap things on your opponent's side of the board inside of the Hobbit, and we're going to go through them today. What you're looking for is cards that have the most impact for the least amount of cost. So you want to be able to cast them early to get rid of things, and you don't want them to cost too much. The other thing that's important is how rare are they, because if a card is rare or mythic, the chances of you getting even one of them, let alone multiple of them, into your deck is going to be really difficult. So when you are assessing what you have out, you are going to look at what removal you have and also how those colors of the removal play with your other colors, particularly your powerful cards. And if you can get the removal in the same color as your powerful cards, then you're really sitting pretty. So let's take a look at these. Remember, the lowest cost is going to be the most important, and you want those to come in at a low rarity. So the first one we have here is Stir Up Trouble. This is a black. It costs 1 black, but that is deceiving because there's an extra cost. You can destroy any target creatures, but the additional cost is to either sacrifice an artifact or creature or pay 4. So this could end up being a 1 drop. If you have something to sacrifice, you're going to be looking for something really cheap to sacrifice. In this case, you're probably looking for an army that you have just amassed. So if you are playing a goblin deck, you amass an army, it's brand new, 1+1/+1 counter on it. That's not going to hurt you too much to sack that and then destroy a creature. But if you have to pay 5 to cast this spell, it's not super great, but in the late game, it could still really help you out. Next up in the 1 cost, we have Giant's Boulder. Giant's Boulder isn't going to do anything for removal right away, but it's a future threat to your opponents. It only costs 1 to put it out. It's a common as well, so it's going to see play in a lot of decks, and it gives you the chance to fix your mana by being able to pay 1 and tap it to add a mana of any color. So if you need a mana fix, this is here for you. Then it has a late game destruction. You can sacrifice this artifact after you pay 7 and tap it to destroy target permanent. So any permanent on the board you can destroy. That's going to be a very late game play though, so its 1 cost is a little deceptive there. Then we move into the 2 cost cards. We have Bilbo's Gambit. Now this is a rare card, so you're not going to end up with multiple of these in your deck very likely, but it does have a pretty good removal here. So on this card, you have the option to gift a treasure. That means you're going to allow an opponent to create a treasure. If you do, you're going to get an added benefit. So the effect of this instant spell is to return target spell to its owner's hand. If the gift was promised, players can't cast spells this turn. So pretty powerful because you can get rid of a card off the battlefield and stop your opponent from casting it, because remember, this is an instant, so you can cast it during your opponent's turn. Okay, next up we have Stone by Sunlight. This is the sun turning the trolls into stone when Gandalf has distracted them all night. I really like this card thematically. Let's take a look at what it does. It only costs 1 and a white, so a total cost of 2, and then you can choose to destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, so you can get rid of something big. Problem is that won't help you in the early game when things are small. Or you have another option: until end of turn, target creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types and gains indestructible. So you can actually save something of your own. So pretty good instant card there. Going to be really helpful. It's an uncommon, so it'll probably see a lot of play. Okay, next up we have kind of an interesting one here. This isn't exactly a removal, it's a little bit of a twist. This is Bilbo Luckwear, and specifically the adventure on him. Burglar's Plot. It does come in at a total cost of 5, whereas the card itself comes in at a cost of 2. But this sorcery adventure has exchange control of 2 target non-land permanents that share a card type. So if you have 2 creatures or 2 enchantments or 2 artifacts, you can exchange control of them, which is pretty great because say somebody has a dragon out there, that is a creature. Let's say you have a 1/1 white human soldier, you can exchange control of them and suddenly you've really flipped the table. This is an uncommon, so it'll be a pretty good card to put into your white-blue decks. Okay, next up we have Front Porch Sentries. These are goblin soldiers. They cost 1 and a black. Their removal is only for really small creatures, but they don't cost very much, so early game this is going to be important. When this creature dies, target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So if you have a creature creature with only 1 toughness that is causing you a problem, you're going to be able to get rid of that when this creature dies. Now, black has a lot of sack outlets, so there's a good chance you'll be able to sack this creature and then be able to get rid of that small creature that is bothering you. Okay, the next one isn't removal off the board, it's removal from the hand. So this is Stony Voiced Goblins. They cost 1 and a black, so early gameplay here. When this creature enters, each opponent discards a card. Now, I hate having to discard cards in Magic the Gathering. It really messes up your plans. So the only thing better than removing something from the battlefield is not ever letting it reach the battlefield. Okay, next up, also a 2-drop, is Pinecone Strike. This costs 1 and a red, and I think this is going to be the most important removal spell in the game because it is a common, it is a low cost, and it can deal 3 damage. So you can choose one or both. Pinecone Strike deals 3 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So no recursion for that guy there, and then destroy target artifact token. So there's going to be treasures, there's going to be food. You're going to be able to destroy 2 things potentially if you can deal 3 damage to a creature and get rid of one of those target artifact tokens. I would watch out for this card if you get several of them. Remember, you can play up to 4 of them in your deck. Pinecone Strike, I think, really important. All right, next up we have Quarrel. Quarrel, 1 and a green, so again a 2-drop, and this one's important because it's in green, and green is lacking a little bit in removal here. So target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. This is going to be green's main removal spell, I think, because it is common, it is low cost, and it allows you to take some of those big green creatures and let it just deal damage to one of those creatures an opponent has out. But you will need creatures in order for this one to be helpful to you. Okay, next up we have Warg Tactics, also 1 and a green. Another really important removal spell here because it can destroy target creature with flying. Remember that dragons are going to play an important role in this because Smog has cards at every rarity level, so being able to just destroy a flying creature is going to be critical. Green almost always has a spell like this, and the spell like this almost always has a choice. In this case, the other choice is to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, gains trample and hexproof until end of turn. So this card isn't only useful for taking down flying, but it will be really important here because in addition to dragons, you're going to have eagles and other birds. It's going to be really good to have some flying removal in your deck, particularly if you're playing green and you don't have a lot of other ways to get rid of things. All right, moving on to mana value 3. First up, we have a white spell, which is Velvet Wing Butterflies. Now, this card doesn't have removal on it, but it does have an adventure, which will allow you to tap creatures. And tapping creatures is kind of like the poor man's removal. You get them out of the way temporarily, stop them from being able to do what they want, and it is an instant, which is really useful because you can play it after your opponents have untapped their creatures, but before they've done anything with them. And again, this is going to be a common. You're going to be able to put this in a lot of your decks. It is going to also be a flying creature, so useful for evasion in that way. So this Gaze in Wonder spell, 1 and a white, so another 2-drop here. Tap 1 or 2 target creatures. Stop them from attacking you or stop them from activating their abilities and kind of remove them for that turn. Another way to stop things from reaching the battlefield, just remove them from the beginning, is to counter them. And we have a few counter spells in blue here. Confusticate, it's hard to say that word, and Be Bother. This is a quote from the book, and it says choose 1 counter target spell unless its controller plays 4, or draw 2 cards, then discard a card. This is great because it gives you some card draw if you don't need it to counter, but it costs 2 and a blue, so you do need to keep a bit of mana untapped in order to go ahead and counter that spell. Okay, so next we have Elven Raft Steerer. This is 2 and a blue, so total cost of 3, and it has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, choose 1. You can tap target creature an opponent controls or untap target creature you control. Again, you can kind of remove those creatures your opponent has from the equation by tapping them. But if your opponent has no creatures, you've got nothing to tap, or they're all tapped out, you can untap your own creatures after having activated their ability or attacked with them. So a great card, Elven Raft Steerer, and that's going to be an uncommon, so you'll probably have some good opportunity to play it. Next, we have our common imprisonment for the set, which is Enchanted River's Grasp. And this one I thought was a shoo-in from the beginning that the Enchanted River would be this kind of imprisonment removal. That means that the card doesn't actually leave the battlefield, but it becomes virtually worthless. This one has Enchant Creature. When this aura enters, tap Enchanted Creature and remove all counters from it. Enchanted Creature loses all abilities and doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So that creature becomes pretty much useless at this point. Okay, next up we have another counter spell here. This is Sound the Trumpets, 1 and 2 blue, so a little bit more difficult to cast, but it has counter target spell. If that spell's mana value was 2 or less, recruit. So you can potentially get yourself another creature on the board when you counter it if you're countering something small. If you're countering something big, well, you won't get that benefit, but you will have stopped something big from coming out. Okay, next we have a creature with a little bit of removal on it here. This is Azog Moria's Ruin, and it says when Azog enters, destroy up to 1 other target creature. Its controller amasses Goblins X, where X is that creature's power. If you control that creature, draw a card. card. So you can potentially get rid of something that you don't need on your side and build up your goblin army, or you can get rid of something on your opponent's side, allow them to get a goblin army, but potentially get rid of something that was having a really terrible effect on your game. All right, next up we have one that I think we will see played a lot because it is just straight up destruction. This is Bilbo's Deadly Slice. It costs 1 and 2 black, so a little bit more difficult to cast, but it just destroys target creature. Anything out there that's not indestructible or hexproof, you're going to be able to get rid of with this card. All right, continuing on, we have another black card, 2 and a black for Crude Bent Blade. This says, when this equipment enters, target opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice. So you're just going to tell an opponent to sacrifice something. If they've only got one creature, they have to sacrifice that creature. So this is an artifact equipment, but it's going to get something off of your opponent's board along the way. And next up is a Saga card that actually gets your opponent to discard a card. So this is 2 and a black for Down Down to Goblin Town. I love the names of these sagas from the songs here. And the first phase on it is target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, that player discards that card. This is great because you are in control of it. You can choose the best card in that hand and make them discard it. I will hate having this card played against me, but it will be a really great card to have out there and help you get rid of something important. And because you're choosing, you can also choose not to put in anything that has flashback or recursion in it. Okay, here we have another 1 and 2 black cost, which is Gnashing of Teeth. You get to choose one. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. If that creature would die this turn, exile instead. Or creatures target player controls get -1/-1 until the end of turn. This is a versatile card because you can take out a fairly large creature, a 5/5, or you can do a minor board wipe. Say that you have an opponent who's playing Recruit a lot. They've got a lot of 1/1 soldiers. You can just wipe that off their entire side of the board with this card, which is pretty useful, and also set yourself up for a good combat. Right, next we have an uncommon card, the Black Arrow, which I think should probably go into every deck because it's a good equipment card to have, and also it will help you to be safe from a dragon if you need it. So it costs 3, it has flash, you can play it at anytime, instant speed, and then it has when Black Arrow enters, it deals 1 damage to any target. If a dragon is dealt damage this way, destroy it. So your opponent plays a dragon, you flash in the Black Arrow, deal 1 damage to it, destroy it. The only problem there would be if that dragon was indestructible. Fortunately, the indestructible Smog comes in the scene box and will not be playing in the pre-release, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has reach. Equipped for 1. So useful card even if your opponent isn't playing dragons, but again, since Smog has a card at every rarity level, we're going to see some dragon play in this. All right, we're now getting into more expensive cards. They're going to cost more to play, so they won't be as useful until the late game. So these are cards costing 4. The first one up is Celebrate the Mountain King. This is an enchantment which is like Banishing Light except more powerful. It has when this enchantment enters, for each opponent exile up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. So you can take it away until they have some kind of enchantment destruction. In the pre-release, you of course will only be playing against one opponent, so you'll be getting rid of one of their things, but it can be any non-land permanent. You got an artifact causing you a problem, you can get rid of that. You got another enchantment causing you a problem, you can get rid of that. You got a creature causing you a problem, you can get rid of that. So that's pretty versatile and useful. Next up, for 2 and 2 white, so a little bit more difficult to cast, we have Settle the Wreckage. This is an instant though, and it has exile all attacking creatures target player controls. That player may search their library for that many basic land cards, put those cards onto the battlefield, tap, and then shuffle. So basically, Path of Exile for everybody who's attacking you, which is pretty dang good. Your opponent will get some mana if they have a lot of cards, but particularly if you play this late in the game, they may not even have that much mana left to pull from, and you get rid of all of their really powerful creatures. It could be a really great one. All right, next we have Thorin's Last Stand. Now, on a side note, I wish that this card wasn't called Thorin's Last Stand. I wish it was called Thorin's Final Charge or something like that, but that's fine. Costs 2 and 2 white again. Choose one. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn, so a nice buff. Otherwise, you have destroy target artifact or enchantment, you gain 2 life. There's a lot of artifacts and a lot of enchantments in this set, so this is going to be a really useful piece of removal here that not a lot of the colors have the option of targeting those artifacts or enchantments directly. Okay, next up we have Uneasy Partings, which is 3 and a blue and has this spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets an attacking non-token creature. So if you're able to hold on to 3 mana, one of which is blue, you can cast this while an opponent is attacking you, but it does need to not be a token. Target creature's owner puts it on their choice of the top or bottom of their library. Most people are going to put it back on top, but if they have another card that they want more that's up there, they may end up putting it on the bottom if they've been scrying or something like that. Basically, you get at least some temporary relief from that creature and make them pay more mana to cast it again. Okay, next up is another enchantment with some removal. So you've got 3 and a red to cast Burn, Burn, Tree, and Fern. And the first step is this saga deals 6 damage to target creature an opponent opponent controls. And the second phase is destroy target artifact and opponent controls. You can deal 6 damage and destroy a creature. You can also destroy an artifact on the next one. So pretty powerful card. I think that one should see a lot of play. It's an uncommon, and so it should be able to make its way into a lot of red decks, whether red-white or red-black. Next up, Desolation of Smog. This is 2 and a red. It says Desolation of Smog deals 3 damage to each non-dragon creature. So you could potentially get a pretty good board wipe out of this. You could kind of reset things down. It will, of course, destroy your own creatures as well if you're playing non-dragons. So just be judicious about when you play it. It is rare, so you won't be playing it that often. And it has add 4 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast dragon spells. So you can wipe the board, then cast your dragon, and you can be in charge. Okay, next up we have another adventure with removal. So this is Glow in the Mighty. He costs 4 and a red, but his adventure costs 2 and a red, and it says Easy Pickings. Easy Pickings deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. Again, low level board wipe, especially if you're playing against Recruit or an elf token deck, then you're really going to like this one because you can just kind of wipe those out, assuming that they haven't been buffed, of course. Okay, next for 2 and 2 reds, we get Smog the Magnificent. Now this is the mythic Smog. You are not going to see him in a lot of games, but if you pull him, probably worth playing because he has flying and haste, and then whenever Smog attacks, he deals damage equal to the number of treasures you control to any target. So you have a treasure building deck, you could deal quite a bit of damage to your opponent's creature or to your opponent themselves. Then you have, at the beginning of your upkeep, create a treasure token, so he's also going to make his own treasures. Very useful. Again, mythic rarity, so probably not seeing a lot of play from him, but if you get him, probably worth building your deck towards him. Okay, next up we have another iconic character. This is Thorin Mountain King. He costs 3 and a red, so a little easier to cast than Smog. He has Trample, and when Thorin enters, attach any number of target equipment you control to target creature you control. When 1 or more equipment becomes attached to that creature this way, that creature deals damage equal to its power to up to 1 target creature. So some direct removal here when Thorin enters, so long as you have some equipment out on the battlefield. If you don't have any equipment, it's not going to work out, but if you're playing a dwarf deck, you're going to have equipment. Next up, we finally get another green card. This is going to cost 2 and 2 green. It's Troll Negotiations, and it says put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature you control. Then it fights target creature and opponent controls. But remember, this is a fight, not a deal damage. So the creature that you choose will also take damage in that fight. All right, we're now getting into some pretty expensive cards. These are going to be late game removal for you. This is Magnificent End. It costs 4 and a white. It's an instant, but you would need to hang on to that mana, which you may be doing in the late game. It says this spell costs 3 less to cast if it targets a tapped creature. So this is a good one to cast after something has attacked you because it's tapped as long as it doesn't have vigilance after it's attacked, and then you can cast this for only 2 mana instead of 5 mana. Then you have Magnificent End deals 5 damage to target creature. Great way to get rid of some of those larger creatures. Definitely with this being a common, it's going to play out really well in a lot of white decks. All right, then we have another creature. Bolg, like his daddy Azog, has a little bit of removal on him. He costs 3, a black and a red for a total of 5 mana. When he enters, you may sacrifice another creature. That would be you sacrificing it. When you do, Bolg deals damage equal to that creature's power to another target creature. If excess damage was dealt this way, amass goblins X, where X is that excess damage. If you have a really large creature that you are willing to sacrifice, you can take out something really large on the opponent's side of the board, but you can also potentially take out something small and then get back a large army in return. That's it for cost of 5. Now we're moving into cost of 6. So really expensive cards at this point for what we're talking about, which is a pre-release game. Pre-release games tend to go pretty fast. You don't always get up to casting these larger spells. But this is Thranduil's Decree, 4 and 2 blue. Counter target spell. If a permanent spell is countered this way, exile it, and instead of putting it in its owner's library, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost for as long as it remains exiled. So you don't get that spell, I get that spell. This is a very powerful card. Its high cost is going to make it pretty difficult to see a lot of gameplay, but it is an uncommon, so it could show up a bit. Next we have Gandalf, Spark Starter. This is 4 and 2 red, and it has reach, but when he enters, he deals 3 damage, divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 targets. So it's like the Pine Cones, but you have more control over where it goes. If you want to take out 3 1/1s, you can. Okay, now on to the big costs. We've got these costs of 7 here. We have Smog, the Great Calamity. He costs 5 and 2 red, but what we're interested in right now is his adventure, which costs 4 and a red, so total cost of 5. Spew Flame. Spew Flame deals 5 damage to target creature. Pretty simple there. You're just going to take out something pretty big. And lastly, for removal spells here, we have the Stone Giant of the High Pass. 5 and 2 red for a total of 7. Whenever this creature enters or attacks, create a 3/1 colorless wall artifact creature token with defender named Stone Boulder. So you're going to get these defenders when it enters, when it attacks. Then you have the option to pay 2 and a red, sacrifice an artifact, which of course you have made these walls, but you could also also sacrifice artifacts like treasure or food. This creature deals 4 damage to any target. So this is an ongoing problem for your opponents because you may be able to cast removal several times. Okay, so those are all of the cards that I was able to find in the Hobbit set that are going to have removal or something similar to removal, like discarding or tapping on them. These, I think, are the most important cards for you to pay attention to when you're opening your packs at the pre-release, because if you can build something that has a lot of removal, you are likely to do better in those pre-release games. All right, if I missed any, let me know those down in the comments below. Let me know what you're excited for this weekend's pre-release, and I will see you in the next video.